The last Metroid is in captivity. The galaxy is at peace.
You know, when I started writing this, I immediately began looking for ways to try and justify it rather than to criticize it. I didn't actually want to say anything negative about Super Metroid, even though it has more than its fair share of glaring issues, and I think that that, in and of itself, highlights a much larger issue in the gaming community as a whole. It goes to show that people are willing to overlook and even excuse critical flaws when it comes to their favorite games, which on paper isn't necessarily a bad thing, so to speak. When you're genuinely passionate about a video game, you are significantly more willing to forgive what would have been considered to be horrible design choices because it was such a fun experience. For you as an individual, at the very least, but I feel like more often than not, that sentiment just gives people an excuse to keep their rose-tinted glasses glued onto their fucking face. A lot of people aren't just overlooking the issues that this game has, they neglect to acknowledge them at all. But this game, this anomaly, the very same game that set the standard for side-scrolling action for decades to come, it doesn't matter how tinted your lenses might be. There are rules. You can't just pretend that all the deeply ingrained issues that Super Metroid has don't exist because it was so well received that it completely reshaped how the industry as a whole defined what a video game was. And I know that sounds an awful lot like sarcasm, but I'm being serious. It is entirely possible for the greatest game in this series, which it is, to also have the greatest shortcomings, which it does. And I think that Super Metroid is a perfect example of that very statement. A mechanic that's implemented like shit is still implemented like shit. It doesn't matter how big of a name the series has. And no, I'm not talking about fucking wall jumping. Wall jumping is easy as fuck, and don't give me any of that bullshit about timing and precision when most of you Gen Z Fortnite savants can build entire cities in seconds after getting shot at from 600 meters away. So no, don't tell me it's too hard and you can't get the timing down because that is bullshit. That is everybody's immediate complaint about this game, and honestly, I'm just kind of sorry that you suck. Everybody and their half-sister's stepmother has done a Super Metroid video, and all of them are exactly the same, constantly praising the game for its unbridled perfection in almost every conceivable way, regurgitating the same things over and over, and now I get to do one too. I can't say one thing for certain though. Super Metroid is exactly how I remember it. For better, for worse, I don't know yet. I guess we'll find out. I suppose I can't be too hard on this game, though. It is one of my favorites, even if it does grind my gears into a fucking powder from time to time. For what it's worth, I'm fully aware that everything I just said is like chucking a grenade into a minefield, so maybe we'll just start with what I think was done well. As previously discussed, it set the standard for what an action side-scroller should be for decades to come. Metroid was already a success, but this game put the series on everybody's radar. If you're playing a side-scroller that came out after '94, there's some of Super Metroid's DNA in there, and that's a good thing. For starters, it's beautifully atmospheric. Say goodbye to that heroic and hopeful title music, because it's been replaced by the classic Metroid jingle but with a much darker tone. The implications here are pretty heavy. 8-bit Metroid? Nah, that's some pussy shit anymore. This title menu paints a picture, reinforcing the notion that this is no longer some happy-go-lucky adventure. There's a sinister tone at play here, something much more down-to-earth and serious. There is no happy music, but there are no bright colors. The only things on screen are the bodies that litter the Ceres Station lab that Ridley raided. Also, I am thoroughly convinced that that's a titty. That and a single, dimly lit tube containing the last living Metroid in the galaxy. This menu conveys a sense of dread for what's to come, and I really like that. The opening sequence of the game maintains that atmosphere, too.
The last Metroid is in captivity. The galaxy is at peace.
You gotta understand, I'm kinda having a bit of a nerd freak out here, and I may or may not be frothing at the mouth. Samus recounts the events that led up to this point in the timeline, describing in detail what transpired in both Metroid and Metroid 2, almost in a cinematic-like fashion. This puts the biggest smile on my fucking face every time I play this. Okay, maybe not this part, because Mother Brain fucking sucked. Moving on. The now battered and broken Ceres space colony, or rather, what's left of it, was the best place for this game to begin. And what kind of beginning would it be if it didn't have a fucking explosion? That seems to be a running theme in the Metroid universe. Oh hey, no shit, they spelled it right! So Samus descends on the world now canonically known as Zebes because translation, and the story begins. But that atmosphere doesn't just dissipate once the game begins. It continues to shine for a large portion of the game. I mean, look at how awesome of a landing sequence this is. The rain falling and pelting the glass of the cockpit, the way that it bounces off of her suit as she runs through the grass and how she kicks up water as she moves. The dark and gray clouds moving in the backdrop, implying that this storm that she flew through to get here is only going to get worse. And of course, that somber, sinister soundtrack filling the air with a bit of good old-fashioned doom and gloom. All of this was the result of the developers taking a heavy-handed approach to environmental design. This starting zone is thematically relevant, and that was an intentional artistic touch. And it is absolutely wonderful. For just a brief moment, this 16-bit world made up of nothing but sprites and pixels starts to feel as if it's alive. There is a tone here. I'm not quite sure what that tone is, but Super Metroid fucking nails it in the very beginning. It's as if Zebes is a real planet, and these events are actually taking place. NRD1 went all out with the Super NES hardware. They wanted this to be the best-looking game of 1994. It might not have taken advantage of the Super FX chip, but there are plenty of ways that it could have, and I can only imagine just how awesome it would have looked. As you descend into Upper Brinstar, you'll see a zone seemingly with its own ecosystem. Animals and plants, some hazardous and some safe, all of them neutral, neither your enemy nor your friend. It really nails the explorer vibe that the original game wore on its sleeve. There's something about it that I absolutely love, almost 25 years later. Head through the door at the bottom of the first shaft and you'll find yourself in a very familiar environment. It's there that you'll find your first key item in the exact same spot that you found it originally. The Marumari, otherwise known as the round ball, because balls are round. I really like the attention to detail here. NRD1 went to great lengths just to make sure that these areas and zones felt as alive as the hardware allowed for, by keeping them as true to their original design as they could. There is a lot to be said about the base world design and the artistic direction of Super Metroid. Zebes feels far more like a living, breathing world than it ever had before, and in that respect, the game deserves the crown that so many people give it. From a graphical standpoint, Super Metroid is fucking perfect. I just wish it played as well as it looked. Pardon me while I plummet to the earth like a fucking asteroid, because these controls are just... never mind, it's probably nothing. I'll never be able to forget where you pick up your first missile tank. That'll be burned in the back of my brain until I'm dead. And I'm thankful for that too, cause Zebes straight up feels like a fucking labyrinth sometimes. But I got this memorized. I know this planet like the back of my hand. Post-production Jay here. Be sure to roast me in the comments for that. Truth be told, I haven't the slightest clue where I'm going. Liberties were taken with Brinstar, mostly to keep it fresh, but the main tutorial area from the very first Metroid game remains unchanged, and that's something I've come to appreciate even more so the older I get. You don't get to explore very much of it, but what's there is bound to put a smile on your face. As for memorable moments in the beginning of the game, I guess the Bomb Guardian's pretty cool. I always liked how there was this momentary pause as to build up the intensity, and while you're sitting there fucking off into the sunset trying to figure out why the door won't open, the statue stands up behind you. I'm back, motherfucker. I'm not a kid anymore. This fight used to give me so much trouble as a kid. I've no idea why, but the Bomb Guardian always had a bottle of whoop-ass ready to uncork on me at any given moment. I'm thinking it's just... You know what? I'm reminiscing more than I am diagnosing at this point. Let's fast forward a little bit. Specifically to this boss fight with Spore Spawn. Not exactly a challenging boss by any means, even if you were to do it right, but even now, something does not feel right. And this boss fight with Spore Spawn, which is actually supposed to be really easy, but I don't know, man. Something just feels kind of like I'm sliding around. I feel like I have very limited control of Samus, almost as if she's slippery, maybe? I don't know, maybe it's just me. I did just finish playing Metroid 86, so it's entirely possible I'm still kind of stuck in NES mode, if you will. I'm sure it'll pass on its own. At least, that's what I told myself. And what's worse is that I actually believed it. I've spent decades with this game, and I never learn my fucking lesson. So Spore Spawn is dead. Happy days, fun times, who gives a fuck, where's my reward? Thankfully, there's a shaft above Spore Spawn's head, one that leads you directly to the super missile. It's a great source of damage, and it doesn't replace the standard missile. Okay. Without dedicating too much time to bitching about 30-year-old design choices that were, to a degree, limited by the hardware and software of the generation they were made in, fucking why? Missiles, super missiles, power bombs, the grapple beam, the X-ray scope, all of them, bound to a single hotbar. You cycle forward through them, and the X button on a standard Super NES controller unequips whatever you're using and re-equips the power beam. On paper, this works like a charm, but these aren't exactly the most responsive controls in the world, and this creates a few scenarios you might want to brace yourself for. Translation? Prepare to forget what weapon you're using. Prepare to waste ammunition. Prepare to accidentally fire a grapple beam at a Metroid. Prepare to try and fire a missile and/or a super missile, but you can't because you didn't realize you had the X-ray scope or the power bomb equipped because God forbid the super missile just replaced the standard fucking missile. Prepare to wonder why the morph ball doesn't have its own separate hotbar for power bombs, so it's, you know, one less thing to cycle through when you're in the middle of a fight. Prepare to wonder why in the fuck the X-ray scope isn't one of those hold down and A at the same time for a few seconds to scan the area for destructible blocks kind of deal. And better yet, why in the fuck is it on my combat hotbar? And the easiest way to solve this problem is to just shut the game off entirely. There is a reason why this mechanic was never implemented in games that came after Super Metroid. Slow pace is no pace. This problem could have easily been avoided. It's just... Oh god, I haven't even started talking about the controls yet. Whatever, it's probably nothing, right? On the plus side, I did stumble across the missile tank in Upper Brinstar, so that made me feel a little bit better. Don't get me wrong, my mood is still royally fucked. However, if there's an aspect of this game that I do love dearly, it's the exploration. There are power-ups and secret items fucking everywhere. You just gotta know where to look. I might take issue with the item cycling, but finding a hidden gem buried in the dirt or in a secret room alleviates the sting of that just a little bit. Makes everything feel more worth my while. Rolling back to talk a little bit about weapons, I do feel like Samus's arsenal is larger and— oh shit, missile tank! The good old charge beam, which hadn't been in any of the previous games, is awful close to the good old Spore Spawn's boss room. It's real easy to miss though, even for me. If I could just fucking get up there. The charge beam is fantastic. It's basically a super missile. It just takes a little longer to fire. It also doubles as a baby screw attack. It is awesome. Boss monsters can take charge beam damage, so if you run out of missiles, you still got a fighting chance, especially given how some of these beam upgrades are just wonderful, and there are so many of them. They are just way too goddamn good. You know, speaking of those, I really ought to go get the ice beam, yeah? Or at the very least, the spacer beam. I know where that one is. Especially what with my old buddy, old pal Kraid coming up here in just a minute. God, I hate that guy. So, I'm not good enough to get the ice beam before Kraid. I know that now. I can, however, get the spacer beam, but I've wasted too much time, so I'm just gonna do it after I kill Kraid. I shifted gears and got back on track, and now I'm going after some of the more useful upgrades, so I picked up the high jump boots. Can't get the spacer beam without them, at least not to my knowledge. Good times, now to go fuck on Kraid. Well, hi, Kraid!
Are you ready to die?
Kraid is probably one of the highest points for me in Super Metroid. He almost always kills me at least once or twice. I really like the challenge spike that seemingly comes from nowhere. It kept me on my toes. I really do wish that there was a way to get the ice beam before the fight with Kraid though, because being able to freeze those little stomach missile projectile things, that would have been really helpful. This is the one time I feel like the high jump boots actually didn't fuck me over. As is customary in the Metroid universe, the strongest bosses guard the best items, and in this case, it's the Various suit. Now, about that spacer beam. There it is. Let me just hop on up here. From here on out, it's pretty straightforward. Just roll on through. Only pussies fall through holes. God damn it! Let's try this again, shall we? There we go. See? Easy. Now I'm gonna grab this beam and dip. But the Various suit is still far from complete. It is missing a very crucial component. Unfortunately, it's here in Norfair too, which means I gotta stay here longer, but honestly, I was really kinda hoping I'd have to go and do some digging, you know, somewhere else, but I guess not. The speed boost is an integral part of the game's movement. However cramped you might feel, the speed boost is always a plus to have, which is why I view it as one of the best upgrades in the game, and quite possibly the entire series even. And you might be asking, how is this even a useful item when all the environments are just jagged and far less straightforward than Metroid 86? And to that, I retort with... This is a wonderful item. I have zero gripes. Well designed, well implemented, and it's the only avenue for some of the best and most challenging secret hunting in this game. And as an added bonus, it's not bound to my fucking weapon bar. I'll buy that shit for $1. It's right up there with the likes of the Ice Beam, just all around great. The Ice Beam is king, keep it on at all times, end of paragraph, it's just great. That's really it, it's just great. I could talk about it, but honestly, there's not really a reason to. It does what ice does, which, unless I'm mistaken, is just freeze things. I got a boss coming up anyway, and I want to talk about him because it's a part of the game that I actually really kinda like. Kraid might be the only challenging boss in the game, but Crocomire is way better. Before I get to that though, I suppose I should talk about some of the impressive level design aspects that went into this game, since I haven't really mentioned much about that. The team behind the art design and the world building of Super Metroid were seasoned pros at this point, having 2 highly successful Metroid games under their belt. It's quality work. All of these zones loop around back into one another from different paths and routes. The finest example I can think of here is the shortcut out of Meridia back into Lower Brinstar, not too far from where you fight Kraid. And bam! Now you're back in Brinstar. The whole idea was to lead you back out here so you can use a power bomb to blow up this tank, which gives you access to the rest of Meridia. And now both of these areas are connected organically, as a direct result from player input. It's fucking cool! It's little things like this that make all the difference between a clustered mess of a map and a seamless labyrinth of caves and catacombs that have a sense of depth and contrast. These areas vary greatly in color palettes and sprite work, but giving each one of them an extra path or two back into a previous zone gives an organic sense to the world design and the artistic style. It keeps the zones from feeling like separate worlds that are isolated from one another, all with their own rules and sprites, and makes them feel like they should exist in the same space, as they should. And it acts as a gentle but subtle guide to keep the player on track. Chances are, if you found a shortcut out of a zone but you haven't found any of the items yet, likely you've gone too far. It's a nice professional touch. Anyway, about that boss. Jesus Christ, you will never not be ugly. This wasn't really a boss as much as it was an endurance test. See, you can't actually kill Crocomire with any of your weapons. You just gotta keep pushing him backwards with missiles to the mouth until he falls into the magma. This is a very well-designed boss, and there's nothing super special about it either. There's no flair, no crazy super attacks that one might classify as bullshit. It's just a fun boss with a decent challenge. Push it harder than it pushes you. Easy enough on paper. Oh my god, will you stop with the hands? This is how he primarily fights back. He puts his hands up to block your projectiles, usually shortly after opening his mouth. He also shoots these acid-like projectiles that almost always intercept your missiles. It's really just jump and fire. This is easy. Come on now, just a few more steps. I never get tired of watching Crocomire burn to death. As expected, this place is loaded with upgrades. Just outside the boss arena, there's a missile tank. And then, just across the arena behind where Crocomire got burnt to a crisp is the grapple beam, which is an item that I really want to bitch about, but it wouldn't really be fair, so I'm just gonna play the item jingle and move on. I really do want to bitch about the grapple beam, but like I said, it wouldn't be completely fair to bitch about it because 9 times out of 10, if you're having a rough time with the grapple beam, it's user error, because you're almost never going to grapple in the middle of combat. You will grapple for an E-tank though, and there's one right here. If I can just fucking get over there. Now that you got the grapple beam, a lot of new items are opened up to you. For example, the wave beam. Pardon me while I try and grapple. These controls are just fucking strange. You'll find the wave beam right behind that door. Not quite the plasma beam, but it'll do. There's also a bunch of expansions that have opened up for you as well. Like right here, for instance. Grapple across this gap and there's a missile expansion behind the door. There are plenty more items, but showing all of them would just kind of take forever. The point being is that this game excels and even surpasses its predecessors in terms of how the world expands as the player grows in both power and ability. It creates new paths to get in and out of zones, revealing new items and secrets. In that respect, this is very well designed. Now, if you like stupid items that serve no purpose other than just to clog up your equipment bar, boy do I have the upgrade for you. I fucking hate this thing. And it's not because it doesn't have its own purpose either, because it does. It's an exploration item. I get the idea. I know what it's for, and I know what it's supposed to do. My problem is with its placement and the fact that it's an exploration item that has a spot on my weapon bar. You know, I just realized 98% of my gripes have to do with this fucking weapon bar and awkward button mashing controls that counteract the precision and fluidity of Metroid gameplay. When I have to stop moving and fumble through all my wanker-beaten buttons just to get to the goddamn item that I want, maybe this isn't necessarily intuitively designed. It's just a thought. Anyway, the X-ray scope highlights destructible blocks, revealing secret paths all throughout Zebes. The practical application of it is just a pace killer. Anytime I want to scan, I have to stop, hit select 17 times, miss the X-ray scope because unresponsive controls mixed with button mashing, get frustrated, repeat process, miss it again, have an emotional breakdown, shut the game off, contemplate the life choices that led me to this point, turn the game back on, reload my last save, all for the sake of finding a single hidden path. And that is not a strong implementation of an exploratory item, for it to sit with my weapons, creating the scenario where I can accidentally select it during a fight, which is fucking annoying. So as a result, I just refrain from fucking with it 90% of the time because it just feels like a chore. Unless, of course, I'm trying to fire a missile and I accidentally just fuck! I do admire the concept because it encourages the player to backtrack and make use of the item. It wants you to go back to earlier points in the game and dig for hidden items that you might have missed earlier. Things like missile expansions or power bombs, sometimes optional suit upgrades too. But I strongly dislike the fact that it wasn't mapped differently. Something as simple as hold down and Y at the same time could have provided the same results with far less frustration. And that word kind of sums up my thoughts on this game in a more general sense. As I've mentioned before, this series brings me unbridled joy, but with Super Metroid specifically, that joy is accompanied by an unusually large amount of frustration and irritation because of some of the design choices that are just strange. Almost every aspect of this game is affected by that in one way or another. The way that Samus's jump height is higher than the ceiling and more than just a small portion of the game. The way she loses momentum when she jumps, or how that jump is extremely floaty, kinda hard to control, and how she immediately drops straight to the ground when you let off the A button. There is no gradual decrease to upward momentum followed by an easily controlled descent, unless you've got the space to perform a full jump from the ground up to her maximum jump height unhindered. Her jump pattern is shaped like a triangle instead of a half circle or oval. The way that input response time is slow and seemingly delayed, making quick and precise movements far more of a challenge to pull off, or how they give you the option to turn off certain pieces of equipment whenever you please, but not the items that you're most likely to trip over in a fight, like the grapple beam since it's a goddamn grapple beam and not a weapon, or hey, even the X-ray scope, an item used for finding hidden block paths, or the standard missile because I literally haven't needed it since I beat the first boss, so why is it still here? I have been scratching my head over this for 25 years, desperately trying to make some sense of it all. And every time I sit down and play this, I start to understand just a little more what the core issues really are. And finally, for the first time in my life, I think I've come to a reasonable conclusion. I feel like all of these things are pieces to the puzzle that is standard Metroid gameplay. These are familiar mechanics and items for any long-standing fan, but how they're implemented is questionable at best and abysmal at worst. Samus needed to have a larger arsenal and more movement options for this game to be larger and more expansive than the ones that came before it. Each piece of that puzzle was designed to fit in a specific spot and serve a specific purpose, which they do, but they don't do it well. I mean, yeah, it works, sure, but it sputters and stalls at times because of the overly ambitious design that is made painfully clear by the way that the game feels when you actually sit down and play it. It's just wonky. That's the only way to describe it. There are many things that should have been done differently. The ambition is admirable, yeah, and I still love this game, even if it does aggravate me, but it 100% drops the ball as a result of that overambition, and it is seriously frustrating. Kinda like Fantoon. God damn it! Fantoon is one of the last 4 mandatory bosses that you have to kill if you want to finish this game, which I do, because the longer I play this, the more aggravated I get. Don't fire super missiles at him, they make him move faster. At no point in my life have I ever been able to get used to the controls and movement in this game, and this boss is just... I fucking hate Fantoon, and you know what? Talking about it makes my blood boil, so I'm just not gonna. On a more positive note, after you whoop his ass, there's an expansion not too far from his boss arena. I'll be honest though, I don't quite remember what kind of expansion it is. I think it's a super missile? Ah, see, it was a super missile, I just forgot. You find the gravity suit on the outside of the wrecked ship, which is great because it lets you move through water unhindered, and it also protects you from magma, but only when it doesn't protect you from magma, which is bullshit. Thanks, now I'm sad. And for no discernible reason, you can go into your inventory and disable the gravity suit if you wanna, because fuck you, but God forbid I disable the X-ray scope when I don't need it, or the grapple beam, or the power bombs, or the standard missile since it's completely fucking irrelevant and should have been replaced by the super missile after I killed the first boss, and I just wanna go to Norfair and get this over with. So I've been hanging out in the deep parts of Meridia. There's a really cool space pirate outpost near the very bottom, almost as far as you can actually go. It's real atmospheric, there's lots of upgrades, even one that requires a shine spark, I think. That's a rare thing for me. I've only managed to find like one other power-up that required a shine spark to get it, and I wasn't even recording when I found it, because my brain is a fucking egg. You know, now that I think about it, all these grapple blocks make me wonder how the space pirates even managed to get around down here. It's just a bit weird, you know? I'm just like, who in the fuck designed this? Oh. Metroids. Huh. Well, if there's Metroids hanging around down here, then there's gotta be a big bastard real close by. That's just common sense. Thankfully, they're seemingly all locked up, though still, you gotta handle this carefully. Metroids are not to be fucked with. Huh. Well, that was easy. Mocktroids are extremely weak compared to an actual Metroid, that is. Easily stepped on, and to my understanding, this is mostly because the space pirates weren't able to properly recreate Metroid DNA, so these Mocktroids are sick, if you will. Lethargic, even. They'll try to attack in groups, but they're inconsequential in the grand scheme of things, and I'm only here for Botwoon and Dragon anyway, so thankfully both of those guys are pushovers. We'll start with Botwoon, since it's the closest one to where I'm at right now. There is absolutely nothing remarkable about this boss. It is filler. You know, a dying boss is always a mood booster. And then we've got Dragon, who is literally the biggest pushover in the game, provided you have enough E-tanks. Almost, it might have been maybe a letdown, I think. I was really expecting him to be way worse. I don't, this boss is just weird, man. He's way too easy. Shockingly easy. Huh? Whether they meant for it or not, I've always felt that these last few bosses, excluding Ridley, of course, were far more forgiving than some of the earlier bosses like Kraid or Crocomire. I doubt that was intentional, but that's always just the feeling I got. Now, I mentioned earlier that there are 3 movement abilities in this game, those being the high jump, the speed boost, and lastly, the space jump. Space jump exponentially improves the way navigating the environments feels, allowing you to bypass combat altogether should you see fit. It's still a pain in the ass, but combined with the screw attack, which you get shortly before the end of the game, you become an unstoppable force of rotating mechanized death, which is metal as fuck. Unless you just can't get the timing on it, something that I've never struggled with in just about, well, any other Metroid game ever, except this one. For some reason, I always miss the activation frames. Granted, unless I'm mistaken, this was the first implementation of space jump in a Metroid game, so it is entirely possible that it became drastically more forgiving in future games, and I've just kinda yet to get good. That sounds a lot more accurate. Jesus Christ, this is embarrassing. You are, by this point, just about as powerful as you can get. Like I mentioned earlier, there are a few more upgrades, but one of those is the plasma beam, and I'm pretty sure that you have to get that, so it's not like you could skip it anyway. And then there's the spring ball, which is cool because it gives the morph ball the ability to jump without having to lay a bomb combo. I feel like it would have been far more beneficial in the earlier parts of the game, and that probably would have allowed for some actual exploration puzzles, but I mean, what do I know, right? And then we've got the screw attack, which is the icing on top of the space jump, turning all those flips Samus is constantly doing into weapons. Slicing and dicing enemies with the spin jump is a blast, but it's another one of those items that I feel like would have been far more useful way earlier in the game, because at this point, you're basically at the finish line. I mean, there's 2 more bosses to smash, and then the final encounter with the Mother Brain. Now, the screw attack. You gotta beat the Golden Chozo to get it, which is fairly straightforward, but this guy's no pushover. And to get it, you gotta go to Norfair. I fucking hate this place so much. Norfair is a beautiful zone full of color and flavor, but there is just so much goddamn magma. God, I hate this place. At least I got the gravity suit, though. That'll protect me from getting melted.
No!
I wasn't joking when I said the gravity suit protects you from magma, but only when it protects you from magma. I was being serious. That is such horseshit. But I want to say something nice about this, because as I've already mentioned, Norfair is one of the prettiest zones in the game, so this morph ball sequence sticks out in my memory for some reason. I honestly don't know why I liked it so much. Norfair has been vastly reimagined from its NES counterpart. It is gorgeous, and it goes to show just how much more of a powerhouse the Super NES was compared to the NES. It was an entirely different ballgame. There are lots of different upgrades that you can get here that are super well hidden, most of which I've already gotten because the last time I came through here I was actively involved with this game, playing it and enjoying it, as opposed to now, where I just want to get it the fuck over with because this is exhausting, and being so close to the end of the game has reminded me of a few things, most of which I'd forgotten about /and/or repressed because they were fucking horrible. Norfair might be pretty, but it is still 100% a hellhole, and I've neglected to talk about it because I honestly can't stand it, but Ridley's here, and he's gotta die before I can finish this game. Anyway though, about that Golden Chozo and the screw attack, as soon as you drop down into this pit, you better come out swinging because he does not fuck around. A fairly simple boss in terms of its attacks, but he can dish out a lot of damage extremely fast if you let it happen. After you finally whoop his ass, you're rewarded with the screw attack, which has little implementation into the game's overall mechanics, save for breaking blocks, because you get it so late in the game that it almost doesn't matter. Not unless you plan on spending a few more hours just exploring, and I've played enough of this game, I think. If this were any other Metroid game, I'd totally be down to do that, but honestly, I just want to get to Ridley and put an end to my self-imposed misery. I've had enough. Getting to his boss room was something I always enjoyed, and I think that's because of the magma race, though I do kind of wish that my gravity suit, which is supposed to protect me from magma, would protect me from magma, but fuck me, I guess. I know that's an inconsequential gripe, but I am still super ass-chapped about that. There's a save station I gotta stop at first, cause this boss is a giant fucking pain in the ass, and if you can't tell, I'm not doing so hot. Just gonna save my game real quick and get myself mentally and physically prepared for the absolute worst. Also, there's a power bomb expansion over here. They don't really have a practical use other than being a screen cleaner, which is great, but I never really use them that much, mostly just when I see powerbomb blocks, and that's about it. Powerbombs are weird. They're great, they do a lot of damage, I don't know, they're just weird. Oh, Ridley, come out, I just want to talk.
Are you ready to die?
Ridley spends just about this entire fight up in the air where you can't see him, not unless you're space jumping. But that in and of itself poses a problem. You gotta jump blindly. Each time is a gamble. He might be on the right side of the arena, he might be on the left side of the arena. Unless you're keeping track, you're never gonna know. Not until he swoops down to pick you up, and to this day, I still don't know how to make him let go. If Ridley kills me, it's because he picked me up and I didn't know what the fuck to do. Super missiles are your best friend. Once those are depleted, which will happen a lot faster than you think because you're gonna miss a lot of shots, downgrade to your standard missile and then hit him with some charge beams. He's a pain, but he's actually a great boss. Not quite better than Kraid, but still great fun. Well designed and provides enough of a challenge to keep me interested. This is great. And just like that, Ridley is dead. Again. I think this is like the 4th time I've had to murder this man. It's a bit ridiculous at this point. Enter the room behind his arena and you're met with nothingness, save for a broken tube. A broken tube that once contained the last living Metroid in the galaxy. Normally I'm sure this would be very sad, but there's an E-tank in here and that's all I care about. Now it's time to start the trek back to Brinstar. After grabbing the E-tank, you'll head back up to the last save station, cause it's time to head topside and go visit that statue with the gems, cause that's the elevator to Taurian and we got a brain to fry. Now, the only way out of here is through a secret wall that doesn't show up through the X-ray scope, which royally grinds my gears. And it's been about 2.5 decades since I really sat down and legitimately played this game, so as a result, I'd forgotten about a few things, including this, and I had an entire 4.5 minutes worth of bitching and moaning about it that I decided to cut because this is a 30-year-old game and it would serve no purpose. But if you want to see a small little clip just so you can kind of get a bit of a gist on how I feel about that, remember that sentence, because it's going to come back up here just a little bit. And it's not because it doesn't have its problems with its placement and the fact that it's exploration item that has a spot on my weapon belt. I fucking hate this thing. Are you fucking kidding me? And that's why I'm not talking about it, because it was just all around bad. 6-year-old me nearly quit playing altogether. It's still pissing me the fuck off that the only way out of the area is through a secret path that isn't revealed by an item that is supposed to reveal paths. Yet another reason for me to hate fucking Norfair and the goddamn X-ray scope. I'm more upset that I have 99% of this game memorized and I still couldn't remember where to go. It's just... ugh. This elevator is pretty cool, though. Now, an important thing to consider as you enter Mother Brain's lair. For Samus, everything up to this point has seemingly been a cakewalk. This is just kind of what she does. She's a bounty hunter. But when you step off that elevator and you enter Taurian, the air hits you differently, so to speak. That same foreboding feeling that I got as a little boy has returned, and I am bombarded by it immediately every single time. Just take it all in. Taurian is incredible this time around. Yeah, they put this save station here for a reason, trust me. There are Metroids here. Real Metroids, not those lethargic clones from earlier. These are the real Metroids. The game was tasteful enough to make me think that I'd already fought the real thing at this point. You go into this expecting him to just fall apart when you so much as breathe on him. They do not. To put it in perspective, these pricks can withstand a power bomb before finally letting go of you. And in case you didn't know, a power bomb is literally a fucking nuke. And they can take multiple power bombs. They just take them like a champ. Like right here. This is a prime example. All the explosives in the world, and he just does not give a single fuck. Standard rules of engagement here. Ice and super missiles. Fuck these guys. This is the one zone in the game that, even though there's a direct line from Brinstar to where you're standing, it feels extremely disconnected in comparison to the rest of the game world. And I don't mean disconnected as in out of touch compared to everything else. I mean, legitimately, this place feels disconnected from the rest of Zebes. Almost as if nobody ever knew this place was even here and that the player is crossing into the dangerous unknown. Even though this game frustrates me, it is beautifully very atmospheric, and the final zone is a prime example of just how far pixels and MIDI instruments can be stretched with respect to player immersion, in the sense that you can easily get lost in it without even realizing it. If you ask me, this is why Super Metroid was crowned as the best Metroid game, despite all of its infuriatingly annoying issues, because those issues molded and shaped future games into better versions of this. Like I said earlier, Super Metroid is far from perfect, but it did set the standard for what a Metroid game should be, and all of the atrocious mechanics that plagued this game were refined or outright removed from Fusion on forward. And while that doesn't make any of these issues acceptable, it does make them a little bit more forgivable. This really is a fantastic game, and the ending only makes it that much better. When you least expect it, that baby shows back up, and it absolutely destroys this side hopper, and then it turns on you. The baby that's clearly not a baby anymore latches onto Samus and drains all of her suit energy, stopping only seconds short of what would have been a shitty yet inevitable death, finally realizing exactly who it is that it's attacking. And then, it runs away. Likely afraid for its life. Given the scenario, that's a pretty rational fear, seeing as Samus literally fucking annihilated its entire species. And now it's on to Mother Brain's lair, cause Samus is prissy and pissy, chock full of missiles and nukes and a maternal attachment to this disgusting fucking thing. But whatever. This is likely the only kid she's ever gonna have. I'd be more angry if she didn't go full spider monkey on Mother Brain. Well, hey there, Mother Brain.
Are you ready to die?
The mechanics remain unchanged. A couple missiles and she goes down real easy. But I distinctly remember that not quite sitting properly with me. Like, when I saw that explosion, I knew for a fact this was not over. And then... fuck yes. Fuck yes. Listen to that music. This is awesome. This fight specifically stands out in my memory, and I think that's because as a child it took me months to get to this point. It was like the culmination of my efforts and hard work, all coming together there at the last minute. Even now, she still kills me more than just a few times. This is just a well-executed boss. Probably my third favorite boss in the game, simply because it has 3 phases. The tank, the evolution, and lastly, the saving throw. You know, you can stop anytime now. Thank you. Jesus fuck. At this point, Samus is defeated. Her energy has been drained, her weapons are depleted, there is no hope left. But then, at the absolute last possible second... haha, yes! Fucking kill her ass! Ha 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 ha! Not today, bitch! Fuck you, Mother Brain! The baby shows up and drains all of Mother Brain's energy, and then returns that energy to Samus, powering up her suit and activating the fucking hyper beam. And then... wait, what? No. No. No, 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 no. That is just... Alright, now you fucked up! Fuck you, you overgrown dick-shaped piece of shit! And with that, the baby's death is avenged. But there's no time for rest or relaxation. This place is about to blow. This is so intense. I absolutely love this. The whole entire facility is just falling down and crumbling around you. Machinery is exploding. Space pirates are panicking, shooting at you, desperately trying to get out with their lives intact. There's a sense of urgency in this escape sequence, one that wasn't present in Metroid 86. I really like the fact that it takes just about all of the player's skills and abilities. It is 100% possible to die down here before the timer runs out. This is just so fucking cool. I can't even express just how much I absolutely love this. I mean, look at this. Look at this shit. This is fucking awesome. The fact that the Super NES was able to handle this and render all of it, without any performance drops, I might add, fucking blows me away. The NES would have had an aneurysm if it tried to do something like this. This is an example of just how powerful the Super NES really was. And this is by far the coolest part, so I'm gonna shut my gob, that way you guys can experience this. With that, Samus cheats death once again. Samus powers up her ship, straps on her seatbelt because safety first, and leaves the Metroids, Mother Brain, and Zebes far behind her. God, this is just fucking awesome. Would you look at that? Oh my god, that is so cool. Oh my god, I'm getting the jitteries. Oh, I'm getting the jitteries. This makes me so happy. Also, fuck those animals. I didn't bother to save them. Fuck them. The operation was completed successfully. That is all that matters. The 6 hours and 31 minutes does not... Don't look at it. Anyway, every time I look back on this game, I gotta remind myself that I too am also viewing it through the same set of tinted glasses that I was talking about at the beginning of this video, and there is a word for that. It's called nostalgia, and every time I play this, I am bombarded by it. I said earlier that it is entirely possible for the best game in a series, which this is, can also have some of the most painful shortcomings, which it does. Excluding other M, of course. I don't want to talk about that. That game smooths out brains. I genuinely love Super Metroid. I always have, and I'm always going to. That is an indisputable fact. My frustrations with this game stem from a passion for this series and the universe that it exists in. I want it to be perfect because I love it. But there is a stark difference between a game that is perfect and a game that is perfect for me. I remember just about every nook and cranny of Super Metroid, except for a few things here and there, but I mean, fuck it, whatever. And every time I turn this game on, I still get the same feelings that I did when I was just a little boy. It's always been a little bit of anxiety mixed with an overwhelming sense of passion for this entire series. This game has a very special place in my heart. In that respect, Super Metroid is exactly how I remember it, but for the better, I think. It's old and clunky, a bit wonky here and there, and it doesn't control worth the fuck half the time. I still get lost despite having this game mostly memorized like the back of my hand. I still struggle with certain bosses and finding certain upgrades, and I fucking hate having to mash select 17 times to get the weapon that I want just to skip it by accident and get pissy. So yeah, it is definitely a mixed bag for me, and the issues that do exist are not something that can just be excused, but I still love that mixed bag because it was one of the first that I ever got, and when those shortcomings are acknowledged, the player can see that Metroid wasn't always this near-perfect series. Previous games had their fair share of issues, but if Super Metroid never happened, there likely would be no Metroid Fusion, no Metroid Zero Mission, no Prime Trilogy. All of these wonderful games stemmed from this. I mentioned this earlier, but Super Metroid is not even close to being bad. As a matter of fact, it's wonderful. It has issues, yeah, but acknowledging those issues was the entire point of this video, not just to throw mud on it. That's why I never once actually said that the game was bad, and when I started writing this script, I wasn't really sure how to go about discussing this, honestly. In hindsight, I've always viewed this game the way that I view my brother and my sisters. Extremely annoying from time to time, a bit over the top collectively, makes decisions that I, for the rest of my life, will never understand because some of those were just straight fucking dumb, but I love them and I always will. This mixed bag pisses me off half the time, and while I'm not willing to excuse that, I am willing to forgive it. 55% of all items, huh? Yeah, that sounds about right. Typically, I tend to temporarily stop giving a fuck when I get flustered, so that one's on me. Guess that means I'll just have to play this again, huh? Wow, that was a lot of T-words. Typically, I tend to temporarily stop. Holy shit, that's like a fucking tongue twister.